Hey everyone, welcome back to DC Motorworks. As promised, we are going to show you around the Noble today. A lot of people have asked us about this. We even had some passersby stop and ask us about it while it's been sitting outside. So this is a British sports car similar to a TVR or a Lotus. But like I said, not many people know about this, so I want to take a few minutes and show you around. Let's check it out. So we're here in the Noble. We just did an alignment, so we want to go around the block, make sure it drives straight, doesn't do anything weird or pull. Just want to tell you all a little bit about it. It's a little bit cramped in here if you can't tell. See, I'm almost right up against the ceiling, but it's not too bad. But they'll give you a chance to look at this sweet quilted headliner done in Alcantara or suede, whatever you want to call it. But the neat thing about this is that the whole interior is done in suede, which gives it a nice sense of occasion, even though it is pretty barren in here. So you don't have a radio or anything. You get a few indicators, some basic forward climate controls, because this does have a lot of forward influence. Get your engine start button, which is a strange thing because you can also just start it with the regular ignition. But it's fairly comfortable in here. One thing that's kind of tough for larger guys or ladies is that the pedal box is super small, so you can find yourself mashing more than one pedal at a time if you're not just using like the side of your foot or something like that. It's great, easy to shift. I mean, it's just a Getrag 6-speed transmission. Feels pretty good. It does have a weird angle here when it is in neutral. It almost looks like you're in a gear. Whereas that you would think would be more neutral, but so its neutral state is canted backward a little bit, but it feels great. It falls right into your hand. Clutch feels great, grabs sharp. Once you get into the boost, it really starts moving. Another thing I noted is how much throttle travel there is. That you think you're giving it a good bit of throttle, and still there's more and more to push. So it gives you a good bit of control, even with the turbos lighting off rather abruptly. And of course, it is super sharp handling. Doesn't weigh anything, so it changes direction super nicely, and just you can feel that the weight or the lack thereof in how this thing drives. It's just a simple, or rather simple, Ford V6 with twin turbos added for 400 horsepower. It's got great mid-range, below about 3,000 RPM. Don't have quite enough boost to really get moving, but once you're past that, there sure is quite the shove. If you like that old school turbo feeling, this does give you a good bit of that. You can see just how focused it is. All you need is a set of gauges, a few other. You get your oil temperature, oil pressure, turbo boost, some simple climate controls, and 400 horsepower. That's all you need. It actually does feel pretty well put together. Sometimes these low production cars can feel a little lacking in the fit and finish department, but I hear that there is a lot of disparity between another Noble and this one, and in the production of them, but this one feels pretty good. we're back at the shop. Just a quick test drive loop. Does get quite a bit of attention, more so than some of the other exotics, just because people don't know what this is. Whereas the Lamborghinis like that one are pretty recognizable. When you look at this, unless you see the badge, people don't really know what it is. So for those of you that are keen on these, you'll know that these are essentially just a chassis, and actually they ended up rebodying these from what I've read with a different body, but what makes some of that possible are the clamshells. So the front clamshell and the rear clamshell both, I mean, basically take away the whole car essentially. So we're gonna open that up and show you around. It's just a couple twist lock with a Phillips. It's just 2 on each side. All right, that side's up. And it is a little flexible, so you can make it kind of a, got to move around to get it open. But here you can see, basically comes right off. You can see it's just the inner chassis here. So you got your radiator up front with your dual fans. So you've got some cooling ducts down below. Here's your AC receiver dryer bottle. So you just got your regular A-arms with coilover suspension that is adjustable. Super simple as far as track car stuff. You know, it's very straightforward. See, it is just a lot of square tubing for the frame. So you see with the front clam open, everything's gone. Everything's super exposed and fairly easy to get to. Do the same thing on the rear here. These are really nice, much better than a Lotus, because the Lotus you have to take apart a whole bunch of stuff to get the clamshell off, unless you've made it a serviceable clamshell, kind of like this one. There are some kits available in order to convert them. So you got a nice big carbon fiber wing back here. Got your fuel filler right in easy access. Kind of the same thing, you have to make sure both sides are free before you can open it up all the way. Once you do, you can see how large of a piece it is. And that's actually what makes Lotuses kind of scary to insure or damage, because these clamshells are super expensive, at least on the Lotuses. I'm sure even more on these because they're such low production. But even if you just crack this, it can total the car. Here you can see the engine. This is a Ford 3-liter Duratec. So just a standard, almost what you call it, daily car engine. You know, nothing super exotic or exciting, but they have added twin turbos to it, which does make it super exciting. This makes 400 horsepower and weighs, I think it's somewhere around 2,500 pounds. So it does move along quite nicely. So you got your intercooler back here, and everything's laid out pretty nicely. It's pretty easy to get to. Neat tidbit on these engines with the transverse mounted Duratecs is that the water pump drive is on the back of the engine with this little belt here, whereas your alternator, AC compressor, and so forth are on the other side of the motor. Which is nice that in the case of the serpentine belt braking, your engine won't overheat because the water pump will still be working. But this just came in for a couple oil leaks and just a general look over. It was just purchased by the gentleman that has it now. So we've already taken care of those leaks and wanted to test drive it, make sure there is no more leaks. So we're going to put it up on the lift and we'll make sure everything's looking good.
All right, so my takeaway on this vehicle is it feels very much like a Lotus. I compare it to a Lotus, like I say, which might offend some people about it. But it's extremely similar. It's a same frame style chassis, fiberglass, removable clamshell. But this one was a lot easier to work on, in my opinion, than a Lotus. It's got these 90-degree twist locks that just twist and comes off. There's no headache about removing the clamshell. It was very well thought out on how it converts back. The interior, very similar to a Lotus as well. I think it's probably better quality than a Lotus. But one thing we did notice was driving on the street, a lot of people, it's a real head turner. A lot of people just don't even know what to call it, what it is. They do a total 180 in their car whenever you pass them. Just look behind you, see what was that just passed me. So you'll get a lot of looks out of it. It's very rare, not a normal something you would see in traffic. But very, very go-kart-like feeling, very tight, very stiff. Feels nice, perfect for a track car, which is what it's supposed to be. I enjoyed driving it, lots of power. It was a good fun car. I don't know, I think they're assembled far better than a Lotus. They seem to be a little more.
Did they drive better than a Lotus?
Probably not. I would say very, very similar to a Lotus. Equal. Now this one, the Lotus that we drove was a supercharged 4-cylinder, and this is a twin turbo V6, so it's obviously far more horsepower. So I don't think it's comparable. But as far as handling and steering, it was very comparable.
All right, so you can see all this disappear in one quick motion. Quick, gentle motion. It is nice they have some like insulation here at all the touch points. It's a nice touch on something that's as low production as this. A lot of that stuff usually gets forgotten or isn't high on the priority list. So let's go ahead and take a look at the interior. It is actually pretty nice in here. Alcantara everywhere. One funny thing I just saw about having a quote-unquote normal motor that they've modified. So you get your factory Ford 5W20 oil cap. If you look close, you got a little sticker that says 5W40 Synthetic Mobile 1. Small companies like this don't have the budgets to create everything on their own. So you can see a super familiar reservoir for the power steering here. It is a ZF reservoir, but it's super commonly used in a lot of BMW products. And actually also, come to think of it, Lamborghinis. Let's check that out. You can see it's got the exact same reservoir. On the Lamborghini Gallardo here, it's used for the e-gear, or automated manual clutch fluid or transmission. So, but power steering, it's actually, we'll see it in some Mercedes E55s when they split the cooling systems for the intercooler. I think we've talked about that in some other videos. They'll use this reservoir for coolant. So, super common part that is from a normal supplier, used in a bunch of different vehicles, from a British sports car to an Italo-German sports car to or exotic car to a Mercedes that's modified. One neat thing here, this was an option on these cars. You can see the writing on top of the bell housing there. It says LSD. And that is not what you think. That is a limited slip differential. So it is nice to see that equipped on this one, which you really do need with the amount of power this one's got. Just should I explain what that does? So what a limited slip differential is that usually in order to go around a corner, you have to have a differential in speed of each wheel on either side. And when you go with a lot of power like this one has, and especially the light weight, when you're applying all that power to the rear wheels, it'll tend to go to the wheel that has the least grip. And you'll get what's called the dog leg burnout, or a one-tire fire, where you just have one wheel spinning and all the power is on one side and you're not really getting very far. But what that limited slip differential will do will transfer power equally, or help transfer power to the other wheel that has more traction in order to get the power down to the road. So I know it's kind of tough to see under here. You can see in true race car form, we've got a piece of sheet metal all the way down the full body of the car. And what's crazy about this is most of it is riveted in, so not easily removable. But just kind of poking around under here. I mean, it's super simple, honestly, and like I said, there's not a whole lot to see. But what we did was back here. It may be tough for a camera guy to get up in there, but you see the oil filter there. And behind the oil filter, try and get a good view here, there's what's called a sandwich plate. You can see those two AN lines coming out of it. So that is a plate that goes in between the oil filter and the oil filter port on the engine block. That is aftermarket, and that is to provide oil feed to the turbos. But it was leaking in between the block and the sandwich, which is a pretty funny name, but that is what it's called in the aftermarket world. And we also had the oil return line here, which is covered in this orange protective sheathing that was leaking as well. So we replaced both of those. We've driven it a few miles, double checked for leaks, and all looks good. So you got your battery tray right here. Like I said, it's just nothing much to it.
Yep.
So neat little thing, if you can see in here, you know, they did think of a lot of stuff. You have some heat wrapping on the exhaust here. Hopefully cameraman can get up in there. It's kind of tough to see, but you got heat shielding, heat wrapping.
Big triangle. That's a good spot.
Oh yeah, you got a bunch up here too. So, and like I said, you've got the orange heat sheathing on all of your oil lines and so forth. So it's actually pretty well built, to be honest. Would you say more or less than the Lotus?
I'd say better.
Yeah, I agree. Differences between each car, which is common in low production stuff, but this one is pretty well put together. So the whole time we've had this, we've been comparing it to other British sports car like the TVR and the Lotus. Would you say this is worse or better than one of those cars?
I definitely like this better than the Lotus. TVR is kind of a special car. It was different, but this one's still better, I would say. Put together better, designed better.
Yeah, when you look at everything, it is all well put together. You said you already had all that, right? So with doing the alignment, we noted that to adjust the rear toe is quite the ordeal. So if you look here on your rear toe arm, it mounts to the knuckle here and also mounts the lower part of the shock. But the adjustment, I know it's tough to see in here, I apologize. You can see here, you have an adjustment there. So in order to adjust this rear alignment, normally a toe adjustment will have a adjustable sleeve on both sides of the tie rod so that you can just loosen both jam nuts, turn it, adjust it. But because this one's fixed on this end, you'd have to totally remove it from the car, guess how much you have to adjust it, and then put it back in, try it again, and if you have it wrong, you have to take it all back apart and start over. And what's tough about that additionally is because of the shape of that joint there, you can only turn it one position or half a turn each time. So it'd be tough to find the perfect spot. You'd have to guess between one or the other. So you'll notice you have a very aftermarket looking oil pan here. But if you look up, what's really neat is you can see where they essentially merged it with the factory oil pan. They also put the oil return in. You can see where it's welded on. And you can also see the seam where this oil pan meets the factory oil pan. Some funny bits of adapting the engine to fit this. So a neat thing came with this car when he bought it. It's the powertrain installation manual. Got some handmade notes here about what oil and oil filter it uses. It uses a Motorcraft filter, obviously. But it tells you all about it.
Yeah, we're not reading that.
Well, that's why I was holding on the page so someone can look at it.
In a way.
So these are essentially kit cars. So parts included in your kit. It has a somewhere in here it has a whole list of if these still exist. I know we've tried calling a few of these and hadn't had much luck. So here's your installation manual of how to put the drivetrain together. And somewhere You even get a troubleshooting guide right here, so some of the issues you may have. So, Noble assembly facility in England. This just goes through everything of how to put it together. And then somewhere, I think it was towards the back, there's some of the turbo stuff. It tells you even just the little modifications they made to make everything fit properly. All your wiring info. So it's pretty comprehensive. Fuse and relay box with a chart. How the airflow works for the air box. Here we go. So this is your parts checklist, and you can see where someone checked this off. It's nice, it has full color pictures, and it's very descriptive. But that's how you got it. A bunch of parts and put it together. Pretty neat stuff. Good. Here someone's collected a bunch of, this is like your starting procedure someone's written down for you. Someone's collected a bunch of like old magazine articles and so forth. Tells you where the Duratec engines come from. It's funny they've misspelled it there, Dur-E-Tech, when it should be Dur-A-Tech. Using the Mazda 6, Lincoln LS, Jaguar, and Ford Escape. It's forged pistons, upgraded connecting rods, of course twin turbo we've talked about. This one's pretty neat. All a bunch of mid-2000s sports cars and so forth. Got your Lotus Elise. There's a Gallardo, just like the one we got in the shop today. SI Honda. Got an E46 M3. But hopefully that gives you a little bit of info on the Noble. And if you're interested in one, I think there's about 75 of them in the US. And I think they're going around 50,000 or so, I think he said he paid for this one. So a lot of car for the money, and something you can immediately put out on the track. But we're gonna get this one buttoned up, and it'll be going home tomorrow. Look forward to seeing you all in the next video.